Hey gamers, if you like cooperative card games all about managing your hand and all of your action points, then you might want to check out Beyond the Rift. Let's check out how this one plays. In this game, players will work together to complete the scenario that they've set out in front of them. The first phase every round is the hero phase, where players will draw a certain number of cards depending on the number of players and play as many of them as they can afford to play with the action points that they have for that round. They might be able to attack, get more action points. During the enemy phase, they can use some cards to defend, and they might also have some special ability cards which will let them do things depending on the text of those. They will also have some actions available on their player boards that they can do, again, if they have enough action points to spend for those. Once all of the heroes have done that, they will move into the enemy phase, where players will flip over one of these cards that will determine, looking at a chart, what the enemies will do depending on which enemies are out and what kind of card was flipped. Once the enemies have all attacked or moved or whatever they need to do, they will move into the quest phase, where again the players will reference the quest book to see what they need to do. This might be increasing the threat level or just moving things around for the enemies. Some scenarios will also have terrain that needs to come out, things like that. Then players will move into the draw phase, where they will draw up more cards into their hand and get action points based on their static number of action points, as well as how many cards they had left in their hand before drawing. And then they won't have to discard down to their hand limit. If they do have any fatigue or wound cards in their hands, they will not be able to discard those. And if players have a handful of those kinds of cards that they weren't able to discard, then they will die and all of the players will lose. Finally, they will move into the end phase, which again will usually increase the threat, which may consider a win or loss condition for the players, depending on, again, what the scenario is. Ultimately, each scenario has its own rules, its own win and loss conditions, and then players will just have to try and accomplish those goals before they run out of time or hit too much threat or whatever the case may be. I thought this one had some neat elements to it. I thought all of the characters were really unique, and I thought that how you played had a pretty good flow to it overall. I think that it's really important to kind of take a good look at those characters before you start your game. Make sure that you understand what kind of options you have available in your deck, but also make sure that you understand how characters are going to work together. It's not necessarily that every combination of characters is going to be a really good team, especially depending on the scenario, but I think that having a really good understanding of those characters is essential to doing well in this game. There's definitely a big luck factor, which is pretty standard of a lot of cooperative kind of card games. It's going to come down to how things get drawn out of certain decks, especially that reaction deck that's going to add a lot of points potentially to the enemy's defense as you're attacking them, or to their attack when they're attacking you. So a lot of that can have a big play in how well you do. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that can mitigate that, because you do have to play your defense cards ahead of time, things like that. But overall, I think if you like that asymmetry while still working together, then this is definitely worth checking out. But you can see my full thoughts on the blog today and decide if this one's for you.